1. This happened about a year and a half ago. A couple weeks after getting back to my university from winter break, I out of the blue get a few extremely unsettling texts from my mother and sister. They essentially say, "Call me ASAP," and "You really fucked up." I was in the middle of a long stretch of classes, so I procrastinated dealing with whatever horrible thing I had done, just long enough for me to sweat out all non-essential bodily fluids. So I finally decide to call my sister in the hopes that she would let me down easy. Maybe it would lessen the wrath of my mother when I have to deal with her. But at least it could give me an idea of the storm that's headed my way. She and my mother had been out of town for a couple days visiting universities. So my mother's friend, let's just call him B, had been nice enough to house sit for them. B is a 50-year-old, somewhat eccentric gay man. Really nice guy, involved in the community. He's friends with all my mother's friends and was at one point a history teacher in this small town where I attended high school. Well, B, being the healthy eater that he is, had a look-see through the downstairs mini-fridge that morning. There he found what he thought to be some appetizing sugar cookies. He then proceeds to eat 4 of them, watch some TV, and fall asleep on our couch. I don't know how or why B ate 4 of those cookies. They tasted quite awful. Not to mention that anyone acquainted with marijuana would have immediately recognized their slightly off taste as more than just my poor baking skills. These cookies were very potent edibles, maybe an inch in radius. I'd eat about an 1/8 to have a good time. Half of one made most users quite uncomfortable. A few hours after his beginning his dreamy mid-morning nap, B awoke quite groggily. No, this was a little more than post-slumber grogginess. B couldn't get to his feet. He had awoken in the midst of a high that I have but glimpsed. He could barely form words, much less coherent sentences. His claims to have forgotten the number 911, and contemplated crawling to the curb in hopes of the help of some kind stranger. He was sure that he had some kind of psychotic breakdown. Eventually he regained the ability to stumble around. He then decided it was prudent to drive himself to the hospital using our car. I'm honestly astonished he made it there. He had a few vials of blood drawn to be sent into the lab and an MRI of his brain performed, costing him upwards of $1,000. But I asked and was never told the full amount. Finally some tests return and the doctor just laughed and asks B if he smoked any marijuana recently. I saw a video of him around midnight that night, and he still couldn't quite put a thought into words. He finally returned to his natural state in the afternoon of the next day. All of his friends, which includes my mother's friends and my friends' parents, know about the incident. Living in Utah, a fair portion of them are Mormon. I still get dirty looks when it's brought up. Fortunately, my mom thought it was hilarious, other than the medical bills. 2. So this happened several years back, sometime back in high school, with a friend living in Pennsylvania. It was during spring recess, and I decided to head over to his side of the Delaware for a few days to chill and get out of the shithole that is New Jersey. While there, my friend suggested that we build a potato cannon, considering the abundance of PVC and potatoes laying around for some reason. Figured, why the hell not? What could go wrong? The final result was rather crude, but we were more of the function over form kind of guys. We went out to his backyard, set up a makeshift range, got our spuds, and went to town. We each took turns firing a few potatoes downrange, switching out after every few shots. While one person fired, the other acted as a spotter of sorts, and also helped ready the cannon for the next shot. It was during my run of being the spotter that I fucked up. To those who are not familiar, a common design of potato cannon is standard combustion. As part of the design, there's a combustion chamber in which you spray some form of flammable fluid. We used carb cleaner in the chamber. With a grill igniter as the trigger, this is what makes the cannon work. The first part of the fuck-up came from our build. It was less than ideal. We used some cheap glue to seal the parts. I don't remember exactly what, but it wasn't the best. The second part was the choice of projectile. For this next shot, we decided to use this massive potato. Most of our potatoes didn't fit the barrel all that well, if at all, so we used wadding for less leakage from the combustion. This was one super spud that we needed to ram hard in order to get it down the barrel. And the third ingredient of this recipe for disaster, my positioning. Right after we shoved this monster potato into the cannon, I fueled the cannon and helped aim the shot. We painted a target on this old shed in the backyard, and we wanted to hit it dead center. Cannon was loaded, breech was screwed shut, aim was set, and bang! The potato proved to plug the barrel up too well, and that combined with the shoddy construction of the cannon caused a backblast, blowing the breech right off. I was standing directly behind, and the breech nailed me right in the crotch. Time froze for a moment, and I'm pretty sure I heard opera for some reason. I dropped like a sack of potatoes, curled in the fetal position, and threw up, all while my friends laughing like a hyena. 3. While not today, this happened recently. So recently that I'm a little worried that some kind of hotel maintenance employee is going to see this and start putting pieces together in his head and figure out what happened. But I know if I don't post this now, I'll forget it. I was in Las Vegas for work. Not an unusual event for me. In fact, so not unusual that I normally come and go without touching a casino table, or doing almost anything Vegas while I'm there. But I was entertaining others. Wound up spending too much time too late at night at the bar. And when I got back to my hotel, I made the mistake of sitting down alone for one last drink at one of the bars downstairs, on the casino floor. Sitting and minding my own business, I am approached by a beautiful brunette who asks if she can sit down next to me and if I have any interest in buying her a drink. She's pretty enough, and I tell her I'd love to buy her a drink. We get to talking. Normal stuff, asking lots about me and what I do. And after about 30 minutes of flirting and laughing and talking and drinking, she asks if I have a room. And if so, if I want to go upstairs. Fuck yeah, I still have it, I think to myself. I tell her that I think that's a lovely idea. And we head up to my room. We get up to my room and she looks around, walks in and out of the bathroom, then comes over to me and says, "It's $700 for an hour, but don't worry about the time. I'm not going to rush you and we're going to have a lot of fun." After a quick thought as to whether I could afford such a sum, my better judgment came to me, and the blood quickly drained from my second brain as something resembling depression set in. I explained to her that I had completely misread the situation, and that there was no way I could pay her that kind of money. She was angry at first, telling me that she'd been clear from the beginning and asking why I changed my mind. After some negotiating downward in price, to which I continued to decline each offer, I handed her $50 from my wallet, apologized for wasting her time, and wished her well. She thanked me for being a sweetheart and told me not to apologize, but asked if she could quickly use my bathroom to freshen up before she left. No problem. She uses the toilet, freshens up, kisses me on the cheek, and leaves. I go to sleep and wake up to my alarm going off way too early the next morning. I hit snooze a few times and finally drag my hungover butt out of bed to the shower, where I am greeted by a very large, very long, very messy, and very much not mine turd sitting on the dry shower floor. Fuck. She'd left me a present. Unfortunately, this is only where my fuck up begins. Not wanting to touch her shit, I decide to start the shower, point the water over it, and let it wash away until it broke up and ran down the drain. I turn the shower on, start with just cold water in order not to steam up and spread the smell, but then realize that the pressure is better with hot water and crank up the temperature, point it at the turd, close the curtain and walk away. 15 minutes later, I get a knock on my door. Maintenance is standing outside the room asking if they can help, as water is coming through the ceiling in the bathroom below mine. Shit, fuck, what? Shit. At this point, I have the door closed and haven't looked, but I quickly tell him that, I'm sorry, the tap overflowed earlier. It's all taken care of and I mopped up the floor with towels and I'm very sorry for the inconvenience. He tells me all is good and runs off to bring me fresh towels. In the meantime, I run into the bathroom where I find half an inch of water on the floor, as the shower curtain was hanging on the wrong side of the tub, and the shower for the past 15 to 20 minutes has been spraying 1/3 of its spray directly onto the bathroom floor. I quickly shut off the shower and start mopping up the floor. But wow, is this a lot of water. I used up all my towels and luckily get a knock on the door a minute later, with the maintenance man bringing more. A couple more and the floor is in pretty good shape, and I'm all set. Hopefully no charges appear on my bill, no bad damage. Big fuck up avoided. I'm late at this point though, and I need to get showered and out the door. I quickly strip, poke my head in to turn the shower back on, and see that the fucking turd is still there. Now that's not completely accurate. Probably 2/3 of the turd was still there. At this point I'm fucked, I'm out of time, and I just need to get on with my life. So I did it. I pushed the turd to the drain with my foot, and slowly but surely broke it up with my toes and got it to go down. I waffle stomped a hooker's shit. I remember now why I don't usually drink this much. 4. Okay, so this is my by proxy true TIFU story. One that has made me live in fear of blue buckets. To start with a little background, my husband, who did give me permission to share this, to preserve what little dignity he has left, we shall call him Toby. Toby is a grown, at least I thought, man. He was 45 at the time of this mind-numbing incident, and was about 6 years ago. God, has it been that long? Seems like it was yesterday. And I was still a normal, okay, somewhat normal, 37-year-old woman who lived without fear of blue buckets. But I digress. My FU is in 2 parts. FU number 1, not realizing that Toby has a very low tolerance to sleeping pills, and the like. FU number 2, giving Toby one of my prescription sleeping pills. So, on with his story. Toby was having problems sleeping for about a week due to some employment problems on his part. So, being the awesome wife that I was, decided to give him a half of one of the pills that I take. I have been diagnosed with insomnia, and have taken these devil pills for about 10 years, so they are a high dose. Not realizing the horror that was to come, I break one in half and head out to work. I work at a local police station as an overnight 911 dispatcher. The night at work was not all that busy, so from time to time I wondered how Toby was doing at home, if he was sleeping or not. But decide that he is a grown man and knows how to dial a phone. He was fine and sleeping. Oh, how very, very, very wrong I was. Returning home at 6 a.m, I pull into our driveway, and immediately my spidey senses kicked in. I had this overwhelming fear or compulsion to run for the fucking hills and not look back. Note to self, always listen to your gut. I walk in the house and it looks like a tornado has gone through it. And there was a smell. Something that I hope to God I was wrong about smelling, but nope, I was right. It smelled like someone had taken a shit, rolled it in plastic, with a little bit of tuna, laid it out in about 100-degree direct sunlight for a day or two, then doused it with rotten milk. And oh my God, that horrible smell was coming from somewhere inside my house. As I enter through the kitchen, I notice how hot it is in the house. This was in April and was pretty nice out. I walked to the thermostat, which was turned up to 90, and turned it down. I'm like, okay, what the actual fuck? As I look around and notice that the windows are wide open. Curtains are torn down, and a small table turned on its side in the hallway that led to the kitchen. I tiptoe to the kitchen, still thinking to myself that it's not too late to run. I see that the windows are open there too, and again the curtains are torn down and a box of nails spread out onto the floor. As I'm getting more and more pissed, that smell, that hideous funk, hit me again. Was that rotten Chinese food now mixed in it? I gather up all my courage and turn and enter the bedroom, where I hear Toby snoring like a bull rhino blowing on a tuba. And there it was, the thing that has terrified me and possibly given me PTSD. The blue bucket. I so did not want to know what was in the bucket. But seeing as though I am the only conscious person, I had to look. And there in the bucket was quite possibly the largest, yeah, you guessed it, poo that I had ever seen. It was so large that at first I was sure an elephant had broken in and pooed in the bucket. But then I look over at sleeping Toby. He is wearing only a t-shirt, no pants or undies, and black socks, and a long smear of poo down the inside of his leg. At this point, I think I may have blacked out from the sight, because the next thing I remember, I am throwing pillows at Toby, yelling, "What the fuck is the matter with you? It's like you are an unsupervised 5-year-old running around the house. And did you poop in the bucket? Why did you poop in the bucket?" Toby wakes briefly in a narcotic haze and says it is perfectly normal. I had to take a shit and it was hot. And there was a bucket in the bathroom. As I'm considering how much time I might get in the pen for justified homicide, I wake him up and yell, "Get your fucking ass up and get your fucking poop bucket out of this house." So after about 5 minutes of screaming at him, he slides out of bed, getting poo on the comforter, and attempts to get the poo bucket to take it out, and wait for it. He drops the poo bucket, and it was like a poo grenade went off. So this somewhat wakes him more, and he's standing there with the poo bucket, and now said poo on the floor, looking at me. Needless to say, I slept in the basement room while Pooh Boy cleaned up the mess. So after it was all over, I thought I came through it all relatively unscathed. Nope. Now every time I see a blue bucket, I break out into a sweat. And the smell, my God, the smell haunts me. 5. Some background information. We had just taken a long month vacation to Texas. We live in San Diego. We had a great time. However, when we got back, we had a bad surprise. The ants had begun an invasion. It wasn't bad at first, but it got worse over the span of about 2 days. The third day, after we got home, my parents and sister went out for a walk, and I stayed home because I'm a lazy couch potato. I started watching some YouTube and got hungry, so I went to microwave a frozen burrito, which, side note by the way, will probably end up killing me, and noticed that ants had made 3 lines going across the kitchen floor. This was utterly disgusting. I made my burrito and left the kitchen to go back to my laptop in the living room. Big mistake. I stepped in a line of ants and, in no time at all, they were crawling up my leg and into my pants. I lost it. I did one of those ants in your pants extreme dances. I ended up changing into some new clothes and waged war. I got into my combat boots, swim goggles, the kind that cover your nose and eyes, my camo shirt and long pants. I was ready for war. I rummaged through the garage until I came across ant poison traps. I armed myself with about 7 ant traps. I then stealthily sneaked into the kitchen and procured bottles of vinegar and water. After this, I hooked the bottle to my belt and ventured over to the line of ants, now going over my laptop that I am using to type this. There were more ants than I have ever seen in my entire life. Right there on my computer, I turned it off, took it outside and left it there. surrounded by vinegar and water spray. I then went back inside. I picked a few unlucky specimens off my clothing, squashed them, and began to spray vinegar and water all over the ants. Most of them died. I was left with a puddle of vinegar and water, and so many dead ants floating around. No sooner after I did this, more began to come in through the window. I had found the source. I put 3 ant traps down at the window and continued to do the next ant line. Train thing. The 3 ant lines in the kitchen had combined into one large, huge super ant line, all going after the same thing, the garbage. Side note, we have a huge garbage can in our house. Sadly, we had chicken for dinner last night, and that was what they were after. I later found out. Back to the story. I sprayed the vinegar spray, but it wasn't working. I needed something stronger. I poured straight vinegar into a mop bucket, grabbed the mop, and soaked it in vinegar. I pushed the mop as hard as I could on the line of ants. And when I looked at the mop, there were what looked like thousands of dead ants on it. I repeated this process on almost the entire kitchen. I then set up 4 ant traps around all the windows and 3 more on the ground by the trash. Now I had to clean up before my parents got home. I ended up getting lots of paper towels and mopping up the dead ants. This was a real war zone. I cleaned up, and 10 minutes later, after I finished the last ant, my parents got home. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Embarrassing Stories, Episode 11. The last 2 stories, incidentally, were actually subscriber stories, so big thanks go all round to all the individuals who allowed me to use their stories. I hope you enjoyed them. Okay, I'm not going to keep you guys too long at the moment, because I want to get Sunday's video done. Then I want to get the rest of the work done on Monday's super duper big massive upload. So I'm just going to keep it short and sweet from now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.